Welcome back, rum fans. Now, it's fair to say on my channel that while I do love to big up and be patriotic about British scratch rums, there's a distillery that hasn't really fared too well with me so far. And it's not that I think they're making bad rums, far from it. They're just rums that don't really resonate with my palate. And that, I'm sorry to say, is Paul and Jacine up at Matuga. I absolutely love what they're about. I love the whole backstory. I would support them and big them up till the cows come home. There is just something about the rums that don't really sit well. Now, as you can see so far, and some of these will be a few months ago, some will be even longer than that. This was actually the really recent one, this sort of black spiced rum I've done. But Matuga is a brand. So the Live Rum, what we're focusing on today, is another brand from Matuga, from Paul and Jacine. We have got their sort of, this is their number 3. I forget what it's actually called, a Mivuno. I think it's their 30 or 2020 edition. I'd be quite open and honest about that. I just think that is way beyond my palate. That is too wacky and too out there for me. But those sort of people that love, and I'm not comparing it, rum lovers, please do not jump on me. And I'm not comparing it to a Coroni. But it has, whereas Coroni doesn't really resonate with my palate either. I think they are way too complex. That's the word I'm looking for, complex. I think that Matuga Mivuno is the same. It's way too complex for what I like. And the spice is the same. It's like a chai spice. Again, they're not spices that I really like. So far, we are 3 from 3 with Matuga. But I'm really hoping this one is going to change, because I am totally in my comfort zone now. I love white, unaged rum. This is actually their Navy strength, and this is a high, so it's not actually Navy strength. It's even though it's called Navy strength, it's 57.5. We know Navy strength is 54.5. 57 in old school wasn't actually, 57 was proof. If I've got that right, 57 was never Navy strength, that was at proof. Whereas Navy strength was like 4.5 degrees under proof, if you like. So 54.5% ABV. So let's just get that out there. I think that's kind of loosely interpreted right. But regardless, we are talking, it's a 57.5%. And it's pot still. And when it comes to white rum, so here's a distinction, because people have kind of lost this from me over the, they kind of get confused with that. I've never tried to confuse people. When it comes to daiquiris, I love column still, light, bright, clean, crisp. That is what a daiquiri is all about for me. And it is actually what it's all about. Light, bright, clean, crisp, column still rum. That's not to say rums that pot still rums don't work in daiquiris. It's just not inherently what they, the archetypal type of daiquiri is. Basically, what I'm driving at is I flipping love white unaged rums. Sipping white unaged rums, and I'm really hoping that this is going to change. Now, I'm sure you've heard this backstory a few times. I won't go too much into depth, but Paul and Jacine, up in Scotland, distilled from scratch. They've got a big Jamaican heritage, that's Jacine, a big Ugandan heritage, that's Paul. They're kind of using Ugandan and Jamaican sugarcane molasses, or molasses, I should say, to kind of distill this, long ferments. Loads of quirky yeast strains, all that going on there. They're right up there with doing that. But the whole business is about trying to support Paul's home village back in Uganda. They're trying to sustain the sugarcane farms out there with their, I think it's a farm that they've got, but they're just trying to sustain local business. So that is why I'm always going to big them up. Regardless of how the rum sits with my palate, I think their backstory and what they're trying to do is phenomenal. So you've got to love them for that. Now, there's not really too much else I can tell you about the rum. I will remember to give you the price before I do go into the tasting. But just to read you what's on the side of the bottle: Live Navy Strength Rum, bold layers of natural flavour are drawn carefully from slowly fermented molasses and a pure copper pot craft. It sips and mixes like a dream. Its complex character teasing and tantalising before a lingering long and sweet finish. Now, again, I brought this from Paul and Jacine at Matuga. That's who Live Rum are. I'll emphasise that again. £32 for a 50 cl from there. However, my people at Master of Malt you will get it a few quid cheaper if you buy it from Master and Malt, and you will, if you've got a trade account, it's even cheaper than that. So, without further ado, I am slightly nervous because it does say complex character, and that for me is flipping as complex as it comes. But I do really love white unaged rums. I'm sipping pot still rums. Oh, this one's going to pop. The spice didn't. Oh, yes. So let's dive in. Now, this is crazy on the nose because I know full well I'm going to be on my own for this one. But the first thing I smelled was lemongrass. And then it kind of went, oh, this is pot still. I can smell the funkiness of the pot still. But then, I don't know whether I know I'm going to be on my own for this. I get rhubarb. I actually get rhubarb. It's definitely more of that fruity, high estery, yeasty kind of playing about with ferments. It's definitely that kind of vibe as opposed to your sort of molasses, caramel, sort of treacly kind of vibe. So you do still get off white rums and a lot of vanilla and all stuff. It's nothing like this. This is a fruity and herbaceous and pot still, and what's the undercurrent pot still, inherent pot still, that's the word I'm looking for. This smells like rhubarb crumble. That's what I'm getting, rhubarb crumble. But I tell you, the longer it sits in the glass, this will be a fascinating one, sort of leaving the glass for a bit, because again, it's just opening. And as we've learnt now, or we should be learning, you know, rums do open out 15, 20, 25 minutes after they've been in the glass or after some air's got into the bottle. Standard, like most things do. Take wine. You know, I talk about this with Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc all the time. You know, if I'm going to drink wine, it's one of my favourite white wines. But as soon as I open the bottle, no. If I know that I'm going to have a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, it is open the day before, which is a danger for me because I've then got to fancy it. But, you know, 24 hours of oxygen with the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc completely transforms that. And I think it's the same for a lot of rums, especially new age rums, especially UK rums that I'm tasting. No, predominantly I'm drinking a lot of UK rums straight off the bottle these days. So that's that inherent thing. So this will be interesting to see how this comes out. But basically what I'm getting at, now even after a couple of minutes, this is really, the rhubarb is still there, but the herbaceousness sort of really comes out. It's that I'm sort of picking up now a little bit with cane juice. You know, those kind of vibes, and this is not cane juice, I'm not saying it is, but those kind of vibes I need to rephrase that before the cane heads come at me. Look, this is not even remotely close to being agricole or cane juice or anything like that. I'm just talking about those weird kind of, to you, normal, natural, but the journey of herbaceousness and floralness and fruitiness as opposed to that molasses caramel sort of vibe. That's what this gives me. But this is now fascinating because now what I'm getting off this is petrol. Where's that just come from? Swirling it in the glass, there's definitely that hint of fruit in there, but you are starting to get this sort of petrol-y, estery note that's coming off now. That's fascinating. I'm going to revisit that in a bit, but let's get it down the neck. Let's see what it tastes like. Wow, now that is fascinating. Now, this is not going to go down the same route as the previous Matugas, but there is that inherent, I'm starting to pick it now, there is that inherent Matuga vibe. And I did reacquaint myself with the Mavuno before this. And you cannot mistake that inherent Matuga undertone of what they do with their rums. This is complex. At the moment, this is not instantly doesn't light me up, but this is fun to drink. I wouldn't say that fruit that I get on the nose comes out in the rum at all. The rum very much does go into that sort of inherent vanilla-y molasses. So, you know, you do not mistake that. That is molasses rum. So we've got that sort of caramel treacle vibe going on, vanilla undertones going on. There is this top note that I can't quite pick yet. It's not red berry, it's not tropical fruit, it's certainly not rhubarb. I would say there's hints of citrus trying to come out behind the ABV. let's talk ABV here for a second. Yes, it's a hell of a lot stronger than a 40%er. You know it's a hell of a lot stronger. But I'm not overly convinced you would pick it at 57. You might do. I don't know. Oh, if I do that, that rhubarb's come back. When you do that, that's really interesting. What I was going to say, because I've just had a little, what you don't see is like a couple of minutes in between each sort of take here. I did have a smell, and that fruitiness has completely gone off the nose. It is that inherent sort of robust, oily, petrol-y, molassesy kind of vibe coming off the nose there now. That rhubarb, that esters is there, but that sort of rhubarb fragrant herbaceousness is totally gone now. You know, just coming back to that, it reminds me of smoky barbecue. That's a nose that's coming out now. This has transformed so much just in the space of, 10 minutes that I've been shooting. They're not wrong when they talk about, I'm just looking at their sort of website, and there's not much information on there. But the bit that sort of comes out, and I think it's even on the side of the bottle, complex character, teasing and tantalising before lingering for a long, sweet finish. I don't want you to get transfixed by that sweet, because their sweet is very different to what a lot of people will think is sweet. I understand what they're talking about here completely, but when you say sweet, people kind of inherently think, bamboos, or at the very, very least, plantation XO, which is kind of like at the top levels of what rum is legally allowed to be sweetness wise. It is nothing remotely close to being sweet like that. But I understand what they say, because it has got this, creamy kind of upsurge. I don't even know what I mean by that, but creamy sort of upsurge at the end of the palate. It's a very fascinating. It is tantalising. It is, what's the word? Teasing. It is teasing. I get different tasting notes every single time. I'm kind of just sort of sitting here just trying to work out my use case for it. And just trying to get some markers. I've just pulled out these two. I've not got too much less of the Lost Years, but 54.5% Navy Strength White. All right, is a blend. I think it's the 4-rum blend. I can never remember. Barbados, Jamaica. 2-rum blend. Barbados and Jamaica. 2-rum blend. Jamaica and Barbados. But then you've got the Isle of Man, the Hurricane. Now, so 54.5, 64. This sits in between. This is intriguing for me, and I would love to get a rum geek's take on this, because again, it is that oily, barbecuey, smoky vibe that's coming out in this rum that I think is just too complex for me personally. I know, I can taste that is a phenomenal rum. And people might be, people might kind of mistake that and think, hang on, what are you talking about? You either like it or you don't. Look, there is a big difference. It's what I try and say time and time again with these videos. There is a big difference between me liking something and me telling you there's no quality to that. Just because I don't like something, this is what people, I see it all the time. People, just because they don't like something, they cannot appreciate the quality. I'm telling you that is a flipping quality rum. I'm just saying it's not on my palate. Now, some people might interpret that as saying, well, actually, these two are better quality. I actually don't think they are. I actually think from tasting that and the way that's put together and the finish and the way it's kind of going all over the place, I think that is the better quality rum. It's just for my palate and what I actually love, I would quite happily sip on the Lost Years Navy Strength. Is a phenomenal rum to sip neat. I absolutely adore that sipping neat, and I really do. I can even handle that, and that's the difference. I've just had a little glug of that, as you can tell. I've just had a little glug in that, and that's 64%. They're both unsweetened, as far as I'm aware. There's no sweetness gone into that. That's 64. That's 57. This tastes stronger and more complex than what that does to me. This just glides down. Inherent pot still. I get the creaminess, I get the vanilla, I get the molasses off that. That's kind of you know, a really good pot still, high ABV pot still rum that you would probably, for many people, probably not sip, but be a great addition to cocktails. This one, slightly different. You can tell that even though there's where are we? 3% ABV between them. You know, this is stronger by 3%. You can tell that last year's, I would actually put that at a lot lower ABV than 54.5. If you said to me that was 45, 46, I would believe you. That slips down like a dream. That is a really, really lovely sipping rum. Yes, cocktails, but that is just a dream to drink. But for those of you that like a little bit of complexity with your white rum, this is going to have to be a revisit because I'm so fascinated by this. The more it sits in the glass, the more smoky, oily, petrol comes out. But I know so many people love that. So I'm really fascinated other people's takes on this. I really am. I will not have it that that's a poor quality rum. It's just really not. It's just not on my palate.